All right, we are back. Play it forward. Today we have Charity Buckbee. Rustlers Promenade is the film, and Charity is a filmmaker, director, editor, producer. Charity, thank you for being on the show today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
I am very happy to have you. Rustlers Promenade is like part musical, part dance, interesting piece, part period piece. So before we talk about it and jump into it, can you give us a little background about yourself as a filmmaker and anything you'd like to share?
Sure. I guess my journey, as they say,
Yeah.
started back in college when I made the bold decision to be a theater major. Um,
Yes,
as you can imagine, my parents were horrified, but
of
that's beside the
course.
point.
Yeah.
I graduated from there. I did do theater for several years past that point, but I decided not to move to the city since many of my fellow graduates moved to the city and then
The
moved.
city being New York City.
The city being New York City,
Okay.
local colloquialism.
Right.
The city being New York City, many of them moved to the city and then promptly 6 months later moved back broke and very sad in life.
Right.
So
Broken. Broken, broken.
yes, very
Yeah.
broken. So I decided to stay in upstate New York, and I did theater for several years. Some of it paid, much of it volunteer. And then I kind of shifted to film around 2017. Me and my partner at the time decided to open Dirty Sweater Productions, LLC, make it official, and then we started doing many short films. I did three short films before I got to Rustler's Promenade. Uh, and Rustler's Promenade itself, as you mentioned, is very much so a conglomeration of a lot of different pieces. It kind of started with me. I'd always wanted to see if I could pull off a Western-esque film, and I figured a short film would be perfect because Westerns are quite expensive. I've always said anything with horses is going to be expensive. And as you know, there are no horses in my short film, so I tried to keep it
That's right.
not expensive.
Yeah.
Uh, but I started with, can I get the costumes and the location that I need in order to pull this off? And I was able to find a 1800s Dutch barn at a fairground nearby in upstate New York, and I was very lucky with costumes in that I had already, as I mentioned prior, I had many theater connections that I could reach out to and be like, hey, do you guys have collarless shirts and 1800s suspenders, aka suspenders that had buttonholes and not clips?
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I got very lucky, and many of them said, "Oh, yes, we do. We just had like a production of Oklahoma 5 years back, and we had to have all of this stuff." So I lucked out there, and we shot this all in one day, um, which it was a long day. It was 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Mostly because I knew I couldn't get the actors for probably more than one day altogether because it was quite a large cast of
Yeah, it
people.
is. Hmm.
And outside of the three main dancers that are in the short film, none of them were dancers. So many of them were actors, and a few of them were just friends that wanted to show up and be in the short film. Um, and it kind of took off from there. Did you have any specific questions?
Yes, we will
Okay,
get to the
go ahead.
specifics.
Yes.
One of the specific questions is like, okay, Charity, we don't have horses, but we are in a time period musical world, and there are some rustlers, outlaws,
Yep.
and there's some just people having a good old time at a party, and they get ambushed. So the storyline, the narrative, where did that come out of? Why did you go not just to the period, but really thematically? What was going on that said, okay, I want to explore this environment where we have people that are innocent and engaged in a celebratory experience, and then all of a sudden there is some danger coming in, and it threatens all of them. and then there's what follows. That narrative, where'd that come from?
All right. So I've always been a big Western fan. Ever since I was very little, I always loved like the John Ford flicks, the John Wayne, the Who Shot Liberty Valance, those type of Westerns. So it all kind of comes back to
Okay.
that and the fact that I kind of wanted to attempt to make the music first and then have a story that follows kind of the music. That kind of didn't exactly work out, just the way that the film flowed. I had to go back to the music and have them change it a little bit to make it all make
Mm,
sense. Um, but as far as the story is concerned, going from the dancing celebratory people, it kind of came down to what I knew I could afford. So keep it simple, stupid, right? That's what they always say. So one location, the doors are only open once in the entire short, and then they close up really fast. Um, and I wanted to see, okay, well, how can I have a Western happen in a barn in 4 minutes?
gotcha. Gotcha.
So I went with, okay, they're having a celebration a la like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, if you've ever seen that movie. There's a lot of dancing and choreography that happened at a barn raising. I wanted something like that in that vein. So I decided to go with a celebration, get people lined up. I had learned about English country dance very recently before the short film happened. And I was like, I want that. I want that because it's in period and it makes sense and it's simple. It's
Mm,
simple for non-dancers to learn. So that's kind of the main reason why I went with that story. And then I wanted to add obviously a little bit of conflict. So it's not just, people just
right.
dancing and there's nothing that happens. There has to be some kind
Right.
of conflict, right?
Right. Right.
So I had the gunslingers come in, they're gonna rob everybody. And then there was like I told the DP I didn't want it to be like a dance off. Like I didn't because in the short film when people see it, the dancers come up and it's almost like, oh God, is it going to be a dance off? Is that where this is
Right.
like?
Okay.
Are these gunslingers going to start
Uh-huh.
doing
Right.
crazy moves? And I was like, I don't really want that. I just want it to be more like they're distracting them. They're distracting them from robbing the innocent people. Um, and yeah, so that was kind of the basis of the story. I wanted to create a Western in a tiny space. So
Got
there's
it.
no open alleys. There's no, I'm
Got
gonna
it. Got it.
gunslinger, pew pew.
Got
Uh,
it.
just what I can do in a tiny space in a tiny barn.
There's always, so there's of course the kind of logistics and the um financial and all those constraints that go into creating something, and you have a vision, and your vision was the recreating this Western world, and how successful can you be showcasing your ability to replicate that and do that authentically. And that's certainly, very well done in the movie. um no matter what it is, no matter what story, I believe, and it's kind of my job on, especially on this show, and um, to mine the meaning. No matter what story I've seen short films that were completely obscure, and just, and I'm still like hunting down the narrative and how the narrative arc talks about some thematic element that is resonant in all of our lives, and it's always there. It's always there. I've yet to not like, and filmmakers, even on these obscure pieces, are like, yeah, yeah. I don't know if they're just humoring me, but um, I don't think so. And oftentimes they're like, oh, I didn't see that. It's interesting. Anyway, so in your piece, what I saw is, as sort of the theme, the moral nugget is the outlaws representing this force of, right, they're trying to thieve, this greed, this strong force of greed. And greed, the way they become distracted and overcome is through another kind of greed, another kind of desire to possess these pretty girls kind of entice them, and then they're putting circles around them and actually binding them in a way that is uh, then leads to their own freedom. So that greed is always destroyed or overcome by its own intemperance. So that's kind of the piece of it that I see. And so how do you feel about that statement? Is it there? What do you feel about the theme of it and how that may have resonated with where you were at in the time that you were making this in your life?
I would say that your judgment is pretty spot on.
Okay.
Like I said, I kind of did this to just see if I could do it versus let me be like the filmmaker who does the mindful, super mindful storylines and like I want to make you cry. There wasn't really any ego behind making this short film, but what you described so far as the greed and the irony, karma, if you will. With the Cowboys and the cowper well, I don't want to get too much into semantics, but the Cowboys that were uh
Right. The
because
cow dem.
the Cowdem, yes.
Yeah.
Um uh because yeah, they clearly they were distracted by the dancers when they came up and started dancing, and there's a few moments if you pay attention between certain cowboys, obviously the lead and the lead dancer um certainly have a moment in the film where it's very obvious that my mind is no longer on the money. It's on something else, and then they just get kind of distracted. And there's a little bit of like fantastical movement and camera movement that we kind of race to the ending a little bit, but because I couldn't really, there's a lot that happened that I was trying to figure out in the moment on how to wrap them quickly without guns being, involved and then, dancers being shot, yada yada.
You
Uh,
know,
but
I'm glad that, we're we're on point with what's in there in terms of thematically. And, you know, I I mean, cowboy movies definitely have that kind of that legendary that takeaway. There's that good and evil, that's coming in. And you mentioned karma and, the consequences of our actions that create and perpetuate other suffering, perpetuate suffering and the suffering that's revisited on us. So, like, how do you, I guess, if we're going to be stepping in the realm of good and evil in this discussion, about Rustlers Promenade, or at least like, from the launch pad of Rustlers Promenade and Karma and this greed. How do one of the things that's been coming up in my life in the last month is this refrain. I'm like, the more you want, more if you're looking for more, more is never enough. It's just if that's what you want. And there are times where, I know I've been in my life and I'm looking for more. It's just I want to do it again or whatever it is. And it's just it won't satisfy. How do you relate and where do you think maybe what was going on in your life that is had led you to this particular exploration of good and evil within the context of desire?
oh boy, well,
Yeah. You can take a minute. I mean,
yeah,
light up a
that's not a
cigarette or
lot.
whatever.
Uh, I mean, so we shot this during COVID. I and how the years all blur together now.
Yeah.
Think it was 20, I think it was 2021. It was like one
Okay.
year into COVID. And we shot in, I think October, like late October, I think we shot 2021. So it was a time.
Yeah.
We obviously the stresses of the day, the vaccine hadn't come out yet, obviously, and it just or maybe it had just come out, and there was just a lot of people just wanted to escape from what was happening in the real world. I remember like when word got out, like, oh, Charity's doing the short film. And it's only a one day thing. You want to do it? And then I had a bunch of people contact me and I was like, this is great. Yeah, the more dancers, the better. But as far as like what was happening in my life, like I said, this was a very like loose story. There was no dialogue. I knew what I wanted to have happen. Obviously, going in, I knew what shots I wanted. I had a whole shot list and how I wanted the story to play out, but there was no dialogue. Um, so almost like a silent film to a degree. And but as far as like what was happening in my life, I mean, it was the same as everyone else's lives during COVID. Very, very boring, very restricted, very you can't go anywhere without and with good reason feeling restricted a little bit. And you couldn't travel, you couldn't go anywhere. I had vacation plans canceled twice, just because you can't fly certain places because restrictions and if you don't have the vaccine, and it was just a lot. It was a lot for everybody.
So,
So yeah.
how were you able to, how do you think you, because it sounds like this movie's like was kind of a breakthrough. You know, it kind of was like a period of freedom where you and
Oh, it
friends
definitely
and,
was. Oh yeah.
were able to get together and have fun and socialize and in this one day. How did you feel safe to do that? And what do you think kind of was, I
Yes.
guess, was it a breakthrough? Did you, what was it like?
Oh, well, to your point, yes, it was a very freeing day that we shot that, and the people that came out basically said the same thing. They were like, "This is the first thing I've done in 8 months because I haven't been able to work or to do anything, and the movie sets are shut down, and so this is great. It really was freeing for not just myself but most people on the set." And as far as being comfortable, so we did say like, oh, so it must have been after the vaccine because now I'm remembering, we did say to people, we want at least the majority of the cast to be vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, you have to be comfortable with people not wearing masks, obviously. We weren't going to do a masked 1800s short
Right.
film
Yeah.
after I went through all the trouble of getting the period piece costumes. So we made that kind of condition. There were a few people on set who were slightly uncomfortable with the prospect that there might have been one or two people that had not yet been vaccinated. But they showed up anyway, and nobody got COVID.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
yeah.
Yeah. Charity, after making this film, how has your life changed on a personal level?
Oh, it's changed. In the last 3 years, my life has changed dramatically. I mean, I've gotten married. Our business has grown. We made our first feature film 2 years ago and
Oh
released
my.
it this past February. Um, and we're currently in the middle of post-production on our second feature, uh, which we're hoping to spread to the world early next year. But we're definitely gonna do a festival run first, but we're gonna see kind of how it shakes out. We're in the middle of visual effects heck. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, congrats on all that. We look
Thank you.
forward, here on Play It Forward to help you spread the word on all that stuff. Today, Charity Buckbee, filmmaker, director, editor, producer. The film is Rustlers Promenade. You were nominated by Kyle Klieg. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much. It was great.
You're welcome. Cool. Thank you, Charity. All right, everybody, bye. We're out on Play It Forward. Jazz hands, the first. Yeah. Thank you. All
No
right,
problem.
don't go anywhere.